Hello to the world and to the kingdom citizens. I greet you in the precious holy name of Yeshua Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, who said in his word, John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Hi, I'm Dr. John Curry, Ambassador, Pan-African, and welcome to the Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. If you want to follow this podcast, please subscribe to JC Global Embassy TV 1. Ring the bell and hit the thumbs up button. Well, today, this is more about taking time out to thank my subscribers. I want to thank all subscribers, old and new, who have been showing this channel much love and one love with KOG1. Now, KOG1 is the kingdom of God first. One love is Pan-African. Much love is what comes from my heart to you. I just want you to know that I really appreciate you taking time out to watch these video clips and get a greater understanding. Today's subject is going to be foot on soil. Foot on soil. I'm a Black historian, and I've been studying African history for the last 40 years. But there's nothing greater than putting foot on soil. And that's something that my wife and I had a chance to do for the last basically 3 weeks. I want you to know that my intention is always to bring you the unapologetic truth. As John told us in John 8:32, he said, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. My whole goal is to present you with truth. It doesn't mean that everything I say to you is perfect. I would strongly advise you to do your own research and to check things out for yourself. But foot on soil does not match research, because when the research match foot on soil, then you know you're moving in the right direction. My wife and I just came back from Ghana, West Africa. We put foot on soil, on the greatest continent in the world, bar none. I do know why and see why the Europeans do not want the Black Africans on the continent, nor the Black Africans throughout the diaspora, to know their history, nor to come together. Because when we know our history and we come together, there's no other force that can stop us. I want to give a special shout out to Neek Solomon, which was our guide in Ghana. He did an outstanding job. And Thomas, that was driving us around all over the place. And we went 12 hours north and 6 hours south, 6 hours east, 6 hours west. We saw a lot of Ghana, and it gave me more of appreciation of foot on soil. And I truly understand why they do not want the Africans on the continent of Africa to come together and greet and meet each other with the Africans throughout the diaspora of the world. This must take place, and we're working on strategies in order to get that to take place. So stay tuned to this channel, because we're just getting started, not only with foot on soil, but heart-to-heart real discussions from the Africans on the continent, as well as the Africans in the diaspora. As a Black person, when you put foot on soil, you may have the experience of genetic memory. In psychological genetic memory, it is theorized there's a phenomenon which certain kinds of memory, in other words, when you're going through some things, certain kinds of memory can take place, which means that you can begin to have your brain to reconnect to those genetic predispositions that was passed on to us through our forefathers. In our visits to the continent of Africa and Ghana, West Africa, we both noticed, here's something that I want you to get, and here's what the Europeans do not want you to get. We both noticed, my wife and I both noticed, that the Africans as we are in the diaspora, are a brilliant people. Not only are we brilliant, we are an excellent people, meaning that when we do stuff, we want to give it our 100% best. We're excellent people. Also, we noted that we are a creative people. But the most important thing that I pulled out of it on this trip, that we are a very resilient people. You see, we are brilliant, excellent, creative, and resilient. Brilliant, excellent, creative, and resilient. Brilliant, excellent, creative, and resilient. I'm going to say it again. Black people throughout the diaspora all over the world, and black people that are on the continent at present right now, we are a brilliant, excellent, creative, and resilient people. The only people that can stop us is us. The world already knows this. And since the world already knows this, what the world loves to do is to keep us fighting with each other. The world loves to have us putting one another down. The world loves to keep us arguing and fighting with each other. And as long as we're arguing and fighting with each other in the diaspora, and even on the continent of Africa, the world wins. Now, I want to share this with you. As an African, our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, and our greatest weakness is our greatest strength. Now, why is that important for you to know? It's important for you to know because our greatest weakness is our hospitality, and our greatest strength is our hospitality, meaning this: as Africans all over the world, we're quick to love everybody else. That's how South Africa got colonialized, and back in 1852, I believe, got colonialized, 1652. And that colonialism went all the way up to 1795. Why? Because as black people, God has given us the ingredients of love, and we're quick to love everybody. And most people, when they come to the continent of Africa, they take advantage of our love because we're very hospitable. We bring them in, we show them things, we help them to do things. And that's what the British did. They came in, took advantage of our love, and then moved to colonize us in 1652. That colonialism went on to 1795, but then there was a new push at the Berlin Conference of the Congo. And in that push, they came to carve up Africa. And this began to take place in 1884. And that went on until 1957. So why do I say this? I want the Africans who live in the diaspora, that's myself and anyone that lives outside of Africa, as well as those Africans that live on the continent of Africa, to know this. While we were going through slavery in America in 1619, we didn't come out of slavery till 1863. And it was an executive order, meaning this, that most Europeans did not want us to come out of slavery, just as most Europeans did not want the Africans to come out of colonialism. They wanted to keep us there. They wanted to keep us bound so that we would be able to do what they need for us to do. But I want you to know what Jesus said. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 22, verse 35 through 40. And I have that in front of me, and I just want to read it to you so you'll understand what's really going on when it comes to us as black people. Now, Jesus' name in his Hebrew name is Yeshua Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. That's the Hebrew name. But when the Grecians came over, they changed his name from Yeshua Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, to Jesus. And therefore, we tend to call him Jesus even to this day. But in Matthew 22, starting at verse 36, the question was asked to Jesus. And this question was, Master, Which is the greatest commandment in the law? Now they're asking Jesus a question. Which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus responded and said, Jesus said unto him, now the person that asked him the question was a lawyer. It was a trick question. It was a question to get Jesus to say something wrong so they can try to indict him or prosecute him on the spot. But listen to what Jesus said. Jesus said unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. What is the mind? The mind harvests, or the mind holds in it will and emotions. Okay. In other words, Jesus was saying you got to love God with all of your mind, will, and emotion. He said, verse 38, this is the first and great commandment. The first and great commandment is to love God with all your mind, all your heart, all your soul. Okay. Then he went on in verse 39, he says, and the second is like unto it, that thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. He went on and said, on these two commandments hangs all the law and the prophets. So what's the point? The point is the presumption that Jesus had for the people was that they already loved themselves. The presumption that the African had, we already love ourselves, but the Europeans came over and divided us and caused us to look at each other from a different type of lenses. They used the old strategy of divide and conquer. So they divided the tribes and then they went on to conquer them. So we have been trained as Africans on the continent to look at each other with a side eye. And we have been trained as Africans in the diaspora also to look at each other with a side eye. But our natural instinct is to love everybody on the planet. This is why God gave us the greatest continent in the world, where all the gold, the diamonds, the rubies, the cobalt. Your cell phone would not work without the continent of Africa. Your computer would shut down without the continent of Africa. So the enemy don't want you to know how great you are. He don't want you to know what God has given us as a people. So here's what the Europeans love to do. The European nations and other nations want to keep Africa in control by keeping Africa underdeveloped. As long as Africa is underdeveloped, the world is living in prosperity. Africa is fundamental for global prosperity. If Africa is poor, the world is rich. When Africa is rich, the world is poor. So they do everything in their power, everything they need to do to get all of the raw material, as far as mining for gold, mining for cobalt, mining for diamonds, mining for rubies, mining for oil. They do all those things and get it on the cheap. So in essence, Africa can remain a poor continent. But understand this, Africa is the richest continent out of the 7. And Africa feeds the world and been feeding the world for thousands of years. And this is why with some European nations and some of those economists and those that work in these high particular places, it is important for them that Africa remains a place of poverty. You see, when Africa rise, and she will rise, our continent is your continent, my continent, anyone that's black. When our continent rise, and she will rise, all other nations will fall into poverty. Why? Because we'll begin to know how to manage our land. We'll begin to know how to manage our minds. We won't just let them pay us anything on the cheap. We won't allow them to have 98% and we get 2%. We want to allow them to continue to do what they're doing while prostituting the continent that's feeding the world. It's important for them to keep Africa poor and lingering in poverty. Why? Because when Africa is rich, she's a big threat, meaning that when she learned how to manage what God has given her on every level in all 54 nations and soon another 2 to come, 56 nations. When Africa learned how to manage what God has given us, the world will have to bow down to the wealth that God has put on the continent of Africa. Africa is the global prosperity of all the world advanced countries. She's the global prosperity of all the world advanced countries. Now, some of us in the diaspora don't know that, and some of us on the continent of Africa do not know that. We've been living our lives basically through the lenses of propaganda and through the lenses of white supremacy, along with colonialism and all of the other things that come to keep us as black folks all over the world behind. God has positioned us already for greatness. Now, all we have to do is understand what that is and come together as one. So to the Africans on the continent of Africa, I've seen you. I've talked with you, especially in Ghana. You've heard my voice. You know what I mean. I've told you that you're not better than those that live in the diaspora. And the diaspora at times see you as arrogant. They see you as knowing it all. They see you as don't care. And to those of us that are in the diaspora, and what is the diaspora? The diaspora is any black person that lives outside of the continent of Africa. You are a part of the 250 million of us black Africans that lives outside of Africa. That can be in the U.S., that can be in Turkey, that can be in Canada, that can be in Japan, that can be in Russia, that can be in Barbados, that can be in Puerto Rico, Caribbeans, Brazil, that can be in any of the islands, Bahamas. If you black, you're part of the continent of Africa, and you are called the diaspora. Why is that important for you to know? Because many of us Africans who live in the diaspora, we hear stuff like this. The Africans, they don't care about us. They sold us into slavery. And this is why you have to really be careful about what you read in your history book. When Africans fought in wars, what they did, they would capture the other Africans and they would take them and make them servants. They're called indentured servants. They would work them and they would do all that, but they didn't change their name. They didn't change their religion. They did not beat them. They did not do any of those things. So for you Africans who live in the diaspora who have poisoned the well by saying Africa sold blacks into slavery, it wasn't the same thing. Some did sell blacks into slavery, but it wasn't a continental thing. It wasn't a 54 nation thing. It could have been a few nation thing. But we can no longer allow that to divide us. Why? Because that's what the Europeans want you to do. They love it when you fight each other, talk about your women, cuss each other out, kill each other on the street. They love it. Why do they love it? Because that brings our number down. Our numbers, when our numbers coming down, their numbers goes up. Right now, the Europeans are fighting for genetic survival. And who are they fighting with? They're fighting with you. They want you to shoot each other, kill each other over dumb, stupid things that don't make no sense. So as a result, we have to come to understand this. We both was put into slavery. Yes, that's right. We both, the Africans on the continent, colonialized in 1652. The Africans in America was put into slavery in 1619. The colonialism went all the way up to 1957, and Ghana was the first nation to come out with freedom. Blacks, 1619 to 2019, 400 years of slavery. But we didn't really get freed, and some of us are still not free. We didn't receive freedom until 1863. It was an executive order. An executive order means that the whole country don't agree with it. The president had to do it. Lincoln had to sign off on an executive order to free slaves. But guess what? We really wasn't free in 1863. We had 244 years of slavery. Then we had 100 years of old Jim Crow, which is slavery with niceties of complexity, meaning that the Europeans still didn't want to live with you, and to this day still don't want to live with you. But you're so happy when you get around them. You just get glad when you're around Europeans. Now know this, the struggle that the Africans on the continent went through, and it took them a while to readjust their mind. They didn't just colonize their land, they colonized their mind. The same is true with us. They didn't just put us in slavery, they put our minds in slavery. They had us to deny our own history. They wouldn't tell us our history. So when you see a black on the continent of Africa who happened to make it to America, to the diaspora, don't look down on him. He's working through the process of colonialism. And some of us blacks in America, we're working through the process of slavery. We're still trying to find our way. Know this. All of the pain that I receive as a black African-American male has come from black folks. Mostly all of my pain come from black folks. But check this out. I have much love for black folks all over the world, no matter what has been done to me. You know why? Because I'm assigned to black folks. I'm assigned to love you. Now in the kingdom, it's different. In the kingdom, I'm assigned to everybody, to love all race groups. But until we get there as Americans, until we get there as a nation, my first assignment is to love my own people. So I want black people to understand, in the diaspora and on the continent of Africa, we both have suffered together roughly for over 1,000 years. We will no longer live our lives in a victim stance while practicing hallucinogenic rehearsal and a psychological spin cycle on a perpetual hamster wheel of gradualism. In other words, we got to wait another 100 years before we get there. I need to say this again. We both have suffered together roughly for over 1,000 years. We will no longer live our lives in a victim stance while practicing hallucinogenic rehearsal in a psychological spin cycle on a perpetual hamster wheel of gradualism. Many of us have settled for that. Many of us say, well, we just need to give it a little bit more time. Things are going to work out. And 100 years later, you're still on the wheel crying about how bad your life is, when in fact, it's time for us to come together. Yes, it's time for us to come together, because the time has come and now is. For us as black Africans who live in America's diaspora, to come together and share our $1.5 trillion of buying power to our black brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa as we heal and build together. That's what we need to do. We need to be patient with one another. We need to know that we're both wrestling or plowing through post-traumatic slave syndrome. We're at the crossroads of time on the continent of Africa. We must pursue a national liberation for social transformation, self-determination for black liberation. I'm going to say it again. We're at the crossroads of time on the continent of Africa, meaning they are coming for the wealth. They're coming to do colonialism 2.0. And if we as black people don't wake up, we must pursue a national liberation for social transformation, self-determination for black liberation. We don't have time to wait. We got to heal and build together. In essence, it's time to move forward to help the continent of Africa out before it's too late. As blacks in the diaspora of the world, especially in America, we must help the continent of Africa fight against those parasites. China, Russia, France, Italy, America, India, Turkey, the European nations, as well as the European Union, as they try to restart colonialism 2.0. They're coming for the wealth. And right now, China does not know what she's going to do. So the rumor is that it's going to be China, Black Africa. They're coming with everything they got. And those of us that are in the diaspora, we have a responsibility to take this $1.5 trillion back to the continent of Africa. If not going back to stay, get dual citizenship. And for those 250 million of us throughout the diaspora, we can change things if we decide to get involved. Let us heal and build together. Let us not put each other down. Let us not talk bad about our women. Our women have been through hell on the ship and off the ship. And if it wasn't for black women, the black slave males would not know when to take ships over. We have been through a lot. We've suffered a lot. And if you wonder why you're seeing some swinging on poles, murder after murder, killing, that's a process of cleansing our mind. We need to help each other, love each other. We should not allow ourselves to remain in post-traumatic slave syndrome. We must come off the psychological spin cycle. And we must be able to get our heads right as we heal and build together, not only on the continent of Africa, but throughout the diaspora in America. Therefore, we must break through the plantation and colonialism psychosis. I think I need to say that again. We must break through the plantation and colonialism psychosis as we learn to think black. Speak black, be black. Buy black, support black. One love for black. This must be done all over the world as we fight to liberate our black selves. We must fight back economically, spending our money only with black people. We must fight back politically as we vote as a black bloc for our own interests as a people. They're using a 2x4 on our heads. They come to visit us every 2 years, and then they come to visit us every 4 years in prayer that we will vote for them. And when we vote for them, we get nothing. We must learn to manage our own cities, our own communities. And as Marcus Mosiah Garvey said, we should not beg for our place, ask for our place, but make and take our place. Because the Europeans are not going to give us our place. They love it when you vote. But when you vote, make a demand on the vote. Let them know we're going to give you a chance. But if you don't do what you say you're going to do, we're not voting for you anymore. We have to learn how to be strategic with our votes and not just voting for people and they get into office and nothing changes. Guns are still coming to your schools. Guns are still being flooded in your neighborhoods. Guns are everywhere. And we should not depend on the white Europeans to come and clean up our cities because they're not going to do it. Why are they not going to do it? Because it's not in their best interest to save us. Their best interest is for us to die off and kill each other so their numbers can continue to rise. So the question is, can the ocean exist without the rivers? Can the forest exist without the trees? Can the rivers exist without the rain? The answer is no. They all need what they need in order to exist. So I say unto you, Africa, I say unto you, diaspora, can Africa exist without the diaspora? Can the diaspora exist without Africa? The answer is no. On the continent of Africa and throughout the diaspora, we both need what we need in order to exist. So our need is one love for each other. One love for each other, that we will love each other on the continent of Africa. And we will love each other throughout the diaspora. And we will not be manipulated, nor played, nor bamboozled, nor run amok, nor led astray to be 21st century slaves any longer. No, one love for each other, meaning wherever there is black, we will love. Whatever country we will love is black. Whatever a black person needs, we will love. We will no longer allow our black men to continually gun down black men over a joint, over some crack, over a woman, over you in the wrong neighborhood. Just think about that for a moment. The Ku Klux Klan are jumping up and down when they hear about black on black crime because the Klan says, thank you for doing our job. Every group that we end up hurting is mostly our own. That's got to be over if we're going to thrive and be what God needs for us to be. You're black on the continent of Africa and you're black in the diaspora. And we got to stop all this mess of killing each other over dumb, stupid stuff. While the European nations and China is over in Africa right now, taking your money. They're taking your money. Why? Because you belong to the continent of Africa. And since you belong to the continent of Africa, we are healing and building together. Stop letting these white Europeans destroy what God has given us. The richest, by far, continent in the world that belong to you. So don't be fooled by the propaganda. Foot on soil. If you ever get a chance to put foot on soil, you will never be the same. I've seen many Africans over in Ghana that are madly in love with black folks. And I've seen many over in Ghana that had to be dealt with to the fact that they didn't quite understand that they're Africans too. Let us stop being led by European propaganda. Let us stop being led by divide and conquer. And let us rise up on the inside of ourselves, knowing that we come from the seeds of Mansa Musa. We come from the seed of Imhotep. We come from the seed of Nefertiti and Akhenaten. We come from the seed of Cleopatra. We come from the seed of Makeda. All of that is our DNA. We come from the seed of Mansa Musa. All of these great men and women. And now we must stand up on the inside of ourselves and be what we must be. So let us support Africa with $1.5 trillion of buying power in America. And let Africa support the diaspora with all that they have in riches and gold, that when we go there, we can be given land grants to be able to be what we need to be as a people. I say unto you, until you have put foot on soil and met with the Africans, you don't have a clue. And as a black historian, 40 years of studying, and it all came to light with foot on soil. And we're coming together, the Africans in the continent of Africa and the Africans in the diaspora. It's going to be a beautiful thing. I trust you can believe it. I trust you can receive it. And God bless you. Until next time.